All right, hello everyone. What are we here to do? We are here to look today at the different types of footwork that you would need to explore in order to complete the level 3 part of the syllabus, which is where you go from practicing with the Sabre in a solo or a very controlled partners sort of environment to operating competitively against somebody who's actively resisting your strategies. And you don't actually need a lot. You don't actually really need a lot. So by now you should have covered all the footwork exercises, the static exercises, the dynamic exercises, the footwork of 6 steps to walking. All of this should be coming together as a nice simple package that allows you to move without compromising your efficiency, right? So given that you're comfortable with all of that, there's only really 3 types of step that you need to explore in order to be able to be effective against an opponent. And the first one is pretty straightforward, right? So I'm going to talk about these in what order. I'm going to talk about them in terms of how sophisticated they are and how much of a challenge they represent in combat, right? So the first is the most obvious of all, is the passing step. Now the passing step, if you remember from 6 steps to walking, is simply where the back foot becomes the front foot, or if we're doing a passing step as a retreat, we would do it as the front foot becomes the back foot. And in either of these situations, you can see I'm actually making a considerable change in the distance between me and the target. And also, if you'll note from the front, the beautiful thing about the passing step is it really exploits changes of volume. All right, so in this instance, if I step into the center, which is phase 6 of the 6 steps to walking, as I take my exit, I can really elect to make that a quite significant thwart. So not only am I making distance going forwards, but also if you see from the front as I step through, I'm actually using the passing step as an opportunity to create a considerable volume. And it's almost the step of choice when you want to do something like that, because the distance is quite significant. If you're up really close, nose to nose with someone, you can use a much smaller bit of footwork to actually circumnavigate them. But if you're fighting at orbit, if you are a sniper, the passing step to create volume is a beautiful thing. How do we do it? Well, just simply what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this here bolt gun, I'm going to staple this foot down to the earth, it's not going to move, and then from here I'm just going to move forwards and backwards around this lovely simple structure. So here I am, eyes on the target, forward archery, neutral measure, forward archery, not going backwards, staying in the front leg. All right, so this is my passing step. Passing step forwards, passing step backwards. If I do this, that's a further transition, and that's the beginning of the second step backwards. All I want from here is through the neutral in the forward archery, maintaining that, and that's the passing step, okay? So from here, again, it's lovely, right? It's really simple. The next step is kind of what you would be taught classically in most fencing treatises, and it's what we would refer to for the time being, glossaries change, as the advancing step. Now the advancing step is essentially a lunge. Pause. The next step we're going to look at is actually the slip step. Now the slip step is really simple as well, because it follows the same pathway as the 6 steps to walking. They go directly into the passing step normally, but the slip step does something different. From here I go 4, 5, 6, and in the middle I'm actually going to shift weight and launch off the other leg. So if you look from the side, the slip step, what happens is I'm not coming in and going through. In fact, what I do is I step into the center, shift the weight and launch off the first leg. Now, if you see from the front, it's also very, very handy for creating volume, because I gather into the center first and then launch in a different direction. And if you see, I can go in any direction I like with this. I step in and then I can lunge directly to the side. I step in and then I can lunge out again. So if the feet come together first and then you launch in a particular direction, if the back foot trails through, that is your passing step. If the back step comes in and you change and launch with the other foot, whichever direction it goes in, that is the slip step. So the passing step comes through thus. The slip step, and it doesn't matter forwards or backwards, the feet come together, the weight shifts, and then the new foot steps. So from here, this is a retreating slip step, an advancing slip step. Why the slip step? Slip step in particular, you know, some people don't like it because it takes a bit of time before you start your launch, and the idea is that you don't want to be wasting that time. You want to be using the third step and just lunging straight out, but it's not. The context for a slip step is that that first part of the movement is not just done for the sake of it. This first moment here could very easily be a defensive action with the sword as I gather into a compressed potential state, which then launches out into my next attack. So the slip step offers you a moment to gather, and it's exactly the same as the passing step. As you come through the middle, that's your moment of gathering. Now, if you elect to go straight out with the passing step, fine. But if you get to this point and you realize that you don't want to go that way, you need to go that way, you can't step across yourself unless you're really advanced. You can't do it. So instead, the slip step takes over and you launch with the different leg instead. Right? That is your passing step and your slipped step. So passing step, back foot becomes the forward foot, or the forward foot becomes the the back foot. The slip step, you step in and out. You step in and then you kind of shuffle. All right, it's quick, it's sharp, and most importantly of all, if you're wearing something that hides your feet, a nice long robe, and you have good yin yang, they won't see that back foot coming in. So essentially, from a fencing perspective, you get to arm the flesh prior to the launch. And if you can do that without them noticing, wow, you've got 8 foot of distance, you know, that's like nearly 3 meters. It's crazy. It's a big distance. So what we're lastly left with then is what the fencers would default to as their primary method of using the foot to close distance. And they would use what we call is an advancing step. So the advancing step happens by kicking out the leg that's closest to where you want to go. So if I want to go forwards, for example, I have to kick that front leg out, extend this base into a huge attack, and then I'm going to gather that back foot in so that I maintain my neutrality so that I can then move in any direction or retreat or whatever. But if I get stuck out here, then obviously I've got no mobility in any direction. I'm literally paused waiting for the referee to tell me whether I scored or not. This is rubbish. Don't do this, right? So you're going to, when you do a forward lunge, to help you to prevent yourself from taking a step which is excessive in volume, in magnitude, what you're going to do is you're going to try and keep your feet parallel. If you let that back foot kick out, you can go for a stupid distance. And it is really great if you were a sports person at the Olympics trying to score a point against somebody who's 10 foot in that direction. That is what you need to do. Right? But if you're not fighting on a narrow piste, and if unarmed combat is an option that your opponent can choose, if you happen to get too close or you get stuck, right, then that excessive stance is what's going to land you on the floor and then it's dinner time, right? So you just got to get this right. If you keep the feet parallel and you lunge from there, you'll discover that the natural limit on the extension of the ankle stops you from going too far. I mean, sure, with practice you can still get quite deep into that, absolutely, but it stops you from doing it in a reckless and excessive manner. You keep the balance between yin and yang. So when we do the advancing step from here, here's the reason I leave this one till last. You do not want the energy going up and then down. I don't want to launch with the back leg and then gather up, because again, in a sporting situation that may suffice. But in the event that somebody is allowed to grab your sword with their hand or grab your throat with their offhand, then if you're launching upwards, you've lost your route. You don't have the ability to apply any vectors of force to what's being done to you because you've got no anchors. The energy has to go underneath. It's subterranean. And you go, how? Kung Fu. You've got to get it right. If you haven't done all of those leg exercises and those simple base trainings that we've set you up in the weeks prior to this, if you haven't done that, your legs do not have the correct type of strength. Your tendons aren't lined up, your ligaments aren't arranged in a manner which facilitates what we're about to discuss. You can't watch a video on how to play the guitar, pick up a guitar and play it. You have to also practice for years. You have to build up the calluses on your fingers. It's exactly the same with any physical art. It's exactly the same. It's not enough that you get to level 20 in 5 minutes of playing whatever the latest game that comes out on your computer is, right? That's not how it works in real life. You have to sweat through the boredom, through the pain. You have to get treatments. You have to learn how to massage yourself, because you can't do some of these traditional skills without the conditioning that is integral in that training, right? And that requires discipline. That requires willpower. Yeah, the ability to continue when it's no longer comfortable or fun, because the goal is what's driving you forwards, not just the hedonism, right? Not just the glory. Advancing steps, ladies and gentlemen. So if I lift to empty this leg to step out and then draw the back foot in, I'm doing this. And you'll see this all day long. Right? It's not a great look. You know, it is something that we as martial artists are very aware of when we see people who are not educated via a master. They've just seen it on videos and stuff. This normally is taught only through touch. I'm trying to do this through video because we've got no choice at this point, so please forgive me if it doesn't make a lot of sense. You kind of need to do the practice and then it clicks. So, advancing steps. I need to move this front leg, but all my weight is in this front leg, so I can't lift it off the ground yet. I have to apply some force in the back leg. If I shift back to lift this, then you can see what's going to happen. I have to go backwards before I go forwards. The other problem with this is the back leg. If I load it, it's going to launch me that way, because the back leg, as it extends, is going to fire us away from the foot that way. If instead what I do is I drop into the ball of the front foot even deeper, I start to become aware of a potential building up in the back foot, and that potential is what's going to shoot me forwards. It's going to allow me from here, I drop down, and now I feel that almost equal between these feet. If I fire this leg now, pushing the center of my body forwards, I'm able to create the extension in the foot. So from here and back. And I'm not going up and down, I'm actually going down, arriving, and then back. Now, even more parallel with the feet, perfectly lined up on the target, and you can see it's not actually a very big step at all. What I'm now going to do is I'm also going to shuffle the back foot in. So, where were we? Passing step, slip step, and advancing step. Yeah? So you move the leg that is closest to where you want to go first, and then you gather the empty foot in to bring yourself back to a neutral, stable base as fast as possible. What does it look like? From here, I'm forward archery, I drop down, I extend the base, and I gather. I gather nice and small. And this is absolutely functional on the retreat as well. So from here, step for the advance, gather it back. Advance and gather, retreat, gather. Advance, gather, retreat, gather. Slip step, gather, advance, gather, retreat. And then passing step is just straight through, straight back, straight through, straight back. And you can chain these in any way you like. Slip step, passing step, advancing step. Bang, done. And ultimately you're going to start to throw these hidden steps and nuances in to hide the wields that you're doing with the hand whilst you arrange for the measure that's going to allow your cut to arrive on the target, even if they're evading. Right? So you have to get comfortable with all of this stuff. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. It just requires thought, right? And then once you've understood it, to practice it till it becomes reflex. That is Kung Fu, right? That is Kung Fu. There is no way around that. If you don't want to do the work, then that's fine. But you know, if you get hurt, it's your own fault. And if you keep losing, it's your own fault, right? Because if you get it right, it's efficient. It's just maths. Combat is just maths. Whoever susses it better. I mean, a dog does calculus when it catches a frisbee flying through the air. So does a human being with a sword versus another human being versus a sword. It's calculus. Right? The more you practice it, the more natural it is for you. Okay, so don't think that watching this video 20 times will work. Watch the video 20 times and then do it 100 times. Then we're talking, right? Take care and...